First Samuel 22. Let's try that. Now, this past weekend, we were Sunday night. We were talking about how David had told a whole bunch of lies, and he lied and he lied and he lied, but God still wanted him to be the king. Sometimes we fail to realize how God will take us back, and we wind up living in isolation or away from God because we won't accept forgiveness. We won't get to that place of security where we once were. Well, David has now found himself in a secure location. How many of y'all have heard of the Adullam house down in Wetumpka? No. What they do, they do a lot with kids and battered women. They give them a place to stay. They also supply them with goods, clothes. I believe they've got something kind of like an orphanage, a halfway house, and they got so many. And y'all know the Adullam house down in Wetumpka is just one of many across the world, because that word Adullam means a resting place. And Adullam was not just a cave, as we'll see here in the Bible, but in Hebrew, that same word for cave looks a lot like fortress. And what the Adullam house tries to do is create a safe environment for kids and women so that they can, come back from what it was that they had fallen into or been stuck in or abandoned into. And we all need an Adullam house from time to time. We need a place of refuge, and we need a place where we can recuperate and feel safe and secure. David showed us that no matter what has gone on in our lives, if we seek a place of refuge, God will give it to us. God will take us back. He will forgive us, and He will set us back up on the right path that we need to be on. So in 1 Samuel 22, it says, David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And this word cave also means fortress. Okay? When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, about him leaving Gath and going into the fortress of Adullam, they went down to him there. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander. About 400 men were with him. Now, I want you to understand what's going on here. David, on the run by himself, having escaped from Nob by telling a bunch of lies, and wound up, y'all, he gets Ahimelech in a lot of trouble. Because when Saul gets there to Nob, he has, what was that guy's weird name? Was it Greg? What was that guy's name? Doug. That was it. Doeg. Yeah. He was like, Doug, Ahimelech done let all of the people go. Done let David go, and nobody said nothing. There were 85 men there that had worn the ephod. All right, they had been ministers, priests, and none of them told on David. So Saul was mad, and he was like, he told some of his army folk, and this is skipping on ahead in 1 Samuel. Y'all can read up on this. And he told them, he was like, kill them all. They had the Holy of Holies there. They were minding the temple. Saul was so mad, he said, kill them all. And they were like, oh, I don't know about all this. But you know who he called on? Doug, because Doug was the man. Even though Doug let David go, he still, at this moment, had to kill the chief priest, Ahimelech. And there were 85 total people who were serving in the temple that Doug killed. And then Doug went out into the city and he killed all the men, women, children, and animals. Wiped them all out because David was there and he left. So David visiting a place wasn't always a good sign. It wasn't always good news. And it brought destruction on it. Well, here David is at Adullam, and when he was there, his brothers and his father's household, they heard that David was here, so they decided to go. Now, I'm going to tell you something. That would be a very risky, dangerous situation. That would be like one of your kinfolks is a crackhead, and you know that the cops are watching that house. But yet, you love your cousin, so you go see Ray Ray and them, even though the cops finna bust up in there. Right? You like, they could come up in there at any time. They don't know that I'm not a crackhead. I could be arrested. I could be shot. You know, I got a pistol permit. Maybe I ought to leave my pistol at home, though, because things could go down. Anyway, how much do you love your kinfolks? Apparently, his brothers who didn't like him, who were jealous and talking down to him because he was a little dude when he got up to go take on Goliath, they done turned around. Something made them see at this point in their life that they needed to go to the fortress. They needed to take refuge. And they wanted to join David there in the place of rest. Sometimes we need a rest so bad that we're willing to risk it in order to get rest. It's almost as if we need a break so bad that our judgment may be skewed a little bit. I want you to notice what these other guys did. And this will tell you something about what David's family was going through. See, our Bible tells us some very interesting details here. It said all those who were in distress. All of who? All of David's kinfolks? All of the other men? There was about 400 of them. So when it said David's father's household heard about it, all those were people that were related to him, that worked for him, that were part of the expanded family, and they all needed a break. Every single one of them. We sing a song called "There's Room at the Cross for You." See, God's house, God's kingdom, God's table is never full. There's always room. If you want to get there, He will make room for you. And He will not make you sit at the end of the table. He will give you a choice seat. And it will be a seat of comfort. It will be a seat of enjoyment and security. You will be able to sit with your Lord and recuperate and rest. These people, it said, all those who were in distress, that means that they were going through a very difficult time. Just being related to David was probably causing some heat to come down on them. People were talking about them. People were maybe running them down or saying that they wasn't that good, or their days were numbered, or they were marked. They were going to fail because the king was against them. You know, y'all ever got up in a situation that was bad and it wasn't your doing? I mean, it could be guilty by association. You know, dude you're riding down the road with, he may have a pound of weed in his drawers. And you ain't even a pothead. So don't be going riding down the road with people with lumpy pants. Guilt by association. If cops don't care, they drag all y'all out. Drag you all out, tie you up, separate you. Then they'll start talking. We'll see what happens. Guilty by association. I remember some of the jobs that we had. My supervisor or boss man, when one of us would mess up, they would chew all of us out. Chew us all out. Knowing that we ain't done that. And y'all, listen, I didn't never mind those meetings when I knew it wasn't me. They didn't happen often. Most times it was because of me. But, you know, I remember working at Russell, and I was an inspector. And I saw that this cloth was messed up, but I was like, well, it was just a little bit of it. It's okay. 10 minutes later, we had a meeting. All 30 dudes in that whole plant was gathering around there with this one rack of cloth, and the supervisor's like, you see this? See, I ain't calling no names, but this is unacceptable. I wonder who could have done this, looking right at me. I'm like, man, I'm sorry. Why couldn't we wear a face mask back then, you know? That would have been better. You hide it. But I don't know. Probably because it was 130 degrees in there. You couldn't breathe anyway. But that would tend to make you not want to do that again. So I made sure that I didn't let that go. And I was only an inspector for a week. So, you know, I went back to just messing it up at the start and letting somebody else look at it. So that was how we did. Sometimes when you were back into school, the people you ran around with would get in trouble and it would look poorly on you, right? I got caught with a stink bomb in one of my classrooms. Little glass vial, break it and it stinks really bad. All right? So I broke it, thinking that the teacher would let us out. This joker had done been to war. He was a military man, and he said, I've smelled napalm. This ain't nothing. Don't you crack that window. Woo, man. Tell me who it is, and we'll crack a window. He knew. Y'all, this was like waterboarding. He wasn't playing. So, I was ratted out pretty quick. Him. So, friend of mine, 2 or 3 days later, drops one in the hallway. As soon as the principal smells it, who has been setting off stink bombs in the school? It wasn't me that time. It didn't matter. He told me, he said, if I smell that smell again, you're going home. So I had to go and tell everybody, hey, we can't be doing that no more, like at all right? We got to be here so many days to pass, and we're getting low. So, you know, that sound like any of y'all's school experience? Or you know somebody like that? You don't know nobody like that? Oh. Who do you know like that? Your husband. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would tell Paul, like, well, you know, just come when you can. Wasn't it? Word for word, wasn't it? Just come when you can. I'm telling you what, the Coosa County standards was up there. I don't know, maybe guilt by association. We just ruined the whole county system. You know, now what do they expect? I don't know. But a few rotten apples can spoil the whole basket of apples. Or what's it called? A sack? A bushel. Thank you. I knew I had never heard a couple of rotten apples would ruin the sack. If they were in a sack, I guess it would. Normally, when you got to take them out of that plastic sack or they will run. We had a potato the other day. That thing had liquefied. I was like, that's what's been stinking. Finally, we found it. I thought it was the dog. Yeah, he's rotten. See, the dog done got lumped in with the dirty potatoes. When we get into stress, it ain't always our fault. Sometimes it is. But the thing that you have in common is that when you are in distress, you want out of it. Okay? Nobody loves to stay in stress. Okay? And I don't think this is a compound word. I think it's not like distress, but stress will make you die. And it will keep on just piling up on top of you. And it's like it squeezes your veins and your arteries till you just die. Stress will kill you. So you need to get out of that. You need to get away from that. These guys were in distress, and David was at a place named Fortress. Let's go see him. He's being hunted. This is David. Let's go see him. David gives us hope. David gives us an outlook that there is going to be a brighter future. David is kind of like our Savior. He saved us from the Philistines, and now he's being unrightfully hunted. So let's go see David. I'm in distress. It can't be no worse than what I'm in now. Says that they were also in debt. What do you reckon the tax fee was for Saul with his lavish living and all of his bounty hunters? I mean, if there was a Boba Fett back then, he would have hired him. He was coming after David. He was going to get him. And who was paying for it? Everybody was. Because that's what rogue kings do. They jack up the price. And so these guys were in debt. They didn't have anything. And they were also discontented. They did not like their life where it was. They did not care for the way things were going. And they were looking for a way out. I can't even rest at home. Let's go to this cave. Let's go to this fortress. Let's go do a new thing. Because right now, life is bad. So they decided that they would go and try something different. They're going to go do a new thing. Even though it may be a little dangerous or uncomfortable, it probably wasn't lavish. It was just a hole in the side of a hill. But it was built up. It was fortified. And they could at least get a night's sleep there. Let's go. So they went. And it said, David became their commander. About 400 men were there with him. They all devoted themselves to David. They were looking for a leader. And despite everything that David had done, they still knew that God called him. Samuel called him. They knew that he was the king that God wanted. Let's get behind this man of God. From there, David went to Mizpah in Moab and said to the king of Moab, he said, would you let my father and mother come and stay with you until I learn what God will do for me? So he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him as long as David was in the stronghold, the Adullam house. King of Moab could have turned him away. He respected David. He knew that David was going to take on King Saul. So as long as King Moab was like, y'all got a beef, then I ain't got a beef. So y'all work y'all's thing out. I'll keep your mama and daddy. All right. Good deal. But the prophet Gad said to David, do not stay in the stronghold. Go into the land of Judah. Because at that time, Israel had split into Israel and Judah. So David needed to get away. That's what the prophet said. You need to get away. The fight's coming. So David left and he went to the forest of Hereth. And that's when Saul was tracking him to, he went to Nob and killed all those people. And coming up on, Saul goes into a cave to relieve himself, and David cuts off the edge of his robe. And then he goes out there and he says, Saul, I could have had you. I had you, bro. See, this is part of your robe. I had you dead to rights. It wouldn't have been cheap or anything. But you are the king that God gave these people. So I will bow down to you and your authority. And at that, Saul knew that David was God's man. You know, when no matter what has happened in our lives, no matter how in distress or in debt or out of shape we are, when we go to God, when we seek refuge in the Lord, He will provide that. I mean, at the darkest times, when you think that, man, this thing may not work out. This thing is heartbreaking. I'm miserable right now. I don't know what to do. We'll turn to God. God, your word promises that you will be there for me. You stand at the door and knock, and if I will open that door, you will come in and you will have supper with me, and we can fellowship, and I will be in the stronghold. God, no matter what I've gone through, you can wipe it all away and make me clean, make me new again. You can cancel out my past. You offer forgiveness. That's a strong place to stay. Now, the hope that He gives us, that hope, He has told us that we will be joint heirs with Christ. I don't care how broke you are. If you're a joint heir with Jesus and He owns everything, that sets you up pretty good. But right now on this planet, may not have a lot of money, but you can be very rich. You know, Jesus helps us to see things on down the road, like the end of the story, how it's going to be, how eternity is going to be. He loves us so much that He couldn't be separated from us. He did whatever He had to do so that we could be with Him. If you are in a place, or somebody you know is in a dark place, maybe they're in harm's way, pray with them, talk with them. The other day when I just took a shot, I didn't know if he'd answer the phone or not. I called David on the phone and I talked to him. He answered. He was up at UAB, and he told me, he said, they're gonna cut me open tomorrow, preacher. Said they're gonna do exploratory. They're gonna look around and see what they can find. And he said, I don't know what they're gonna find. He said, but whatever it is, I know the good Lord's gonna take care of me. And if any of y'all knew him a couple of years ago, you'd know he wouldn't have said that. You know, he just wouldn't have. And now he is. Even though he's in distress, I believe God is his stronghold. I mean, even if his body gives out, if God is your stronghold, then you're in a safe place. You know, so often I know that I lose sight of it, how secure I am in Christ, that I will worry about stuff that makes no sense at all. And I can just hear my Father say, boy, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Jimbo, listen. You know, something like that. Just. Any of y'all ever remember when you were a kid and you felt afraid or something was going on that you didn't understand, and you went to your mama or your daddy and they just put their arm around you, and you didn't know how it was going to go, you didn't know how it was going to work out, but you knew everything was going to be all right. You just knew in that moment, mama or daddy, they wasn't going to let nothing hurt you. They wasn't going to let things fall apart. They were there for you. Now, God is so much more than that, because not only is He there for us right now in this moment, but for the rest of our life, no matter where we are, no matter who's around us, He wants to put His arm around us and let us know it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I know life seems long sometimes. The days seem long, but they're really not. You know, living here on this earth for 100 years, 80 years, that's really nothing, you know, compared to eternity. I think we should just be a little happier, knowing that our days are numbered. And that we have a nice, strong place to reside until we are freed from this old world. You can watch the TV, listen to the radio, and you can get all fired up about stuff that one day ain't going to matter. Or you can just rest when you need it. in Jesus Christ. I can feel my Father say it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. I just gave you all COVID. I don't got it. I don't think I got it. I don't have it. I don't think. I'm just. That was a bad joke. Too soon? Sorry. All right. Any questions?